Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Scott Knuckles with The Untold Story. Thank you for joining me. I hope today's message will drive you to a greater faith, a more lasting hope, and a deeper love for others and yourself. I'm reminded of the quote by Thomas Edison. He said, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." Let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of The Untold Story with Scott Knuckles. And I'd like to begin with a question. How many of you have ever had a major ailment or disease and you ask God for help? Well, you're not alone. According to Pew Research, they shared that 75% of the population has prayed for healing at some time in their lives. Research also tells us that most of us pray for healing for others. We actually pray when we see others struggling and need a touch from God. I'm joined today by one of my dearest friends in all the world, Garry Hamilton. Not only is he a dear friend of mine, but he's also my pastor too. And there's no one I respect more than this man. And it's interesting because 4 years ago, he began to wrestle with something. It just struck me that it would be an amazing conversation to have to talk about that in detail. But I'd like to dive into a story because there's so much that we can glean from it. And perhaps some of you are struggling with some similar things that are going on in your life. So Garry, welcome. I thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your family, your vocation, your hobbies, etc.
Well, thank you, Scott, for the invitation, being with you this evening. I'm from Florida originally. I was born in Central Florida and we grew up in Naples. God called me into ministry from there. And now I've been in ministry for a little over 40 years. And
Wow.
It's just been an awesome time. Back in 1997, God led us to come up to New Hampshire, where we now pastor Tower Hill Church and been there for over 24 years now as the senior pastor.
Wow. And for those of you that don't know, I first got to meet Garry Hamilton when we relocated from Texas to New Hampshire. And it was the worst winter in 100 years. And it was his church that we attended. And then we moved away and we got to come back. And it was so good that we went back to the same church. And we've been there ever since.
It's been a blessing to have you guys back, and the friendship, we never lost that friendship from the time you guys moved away and came back.
It's true. It's like a God story, you know. Garry was diagnosed with Parkinson's 4 years ago. It was a shock to his family, to his closest friends, to his congregation. We want to delve into that. We want to talk about that. So, Garry, tell us what happened and how you knew something was wrong and what you did about it.
Well, when I first started seeing symptoms, I thought maybe I just hurt my back, and then I was pulling a suitcase into an elevator, and my suitcase caught, and it actually popped something in my left arm. And then I was having tremors, thinking maybe I did some nerve damage in my arm. And then so I went to my doctor after a while. I was putting up with this because my legs had gotten tight. I'd had my hamstrings really tightened up. I couldn't walk right. I mean, everything began to hurt and ache. And I went to a chiropractor thinking that was what was going on. And then finally I went to my doctor and I said, I think I hurt my arm. And he looked at me and he says, Garry, there's more going on here than you think. And I said, oh, he said, I'm going to send you to a neurologist. And I'm thinking, why do I need to go to a neurologist? And as I went to the neurologist, he put me through a series of tests. And then he came in and said, Mr. Hamilton, I need to let you know you have Parkinson's. And I just went into shock at the moment. I called my wife on the way home. What's the future? I was thinking ministry could come to an end. A lot of things could happen. And I was just concerned. I was scared. I had the same emotions that everybody else has because we're human. It was a moment of pure shock.
Right.
Because I have never, up to this point in time in my life, I'd never been on any type of medications. I was a picture of health, had no problems going on, and all of a sudden you're told you got Parkinson's. My wife and I both were in shock.
It's so interesting because you're you're thinking that you hurt your elbow and then you're going in and then you realize it's something that you're going to have to deal with. Most people are going to deal with for the rest of their lives. Did you have fear at that time? Like,
absolutely,
my.
Absolutely. Your mind starts, it's just like anybody else's mind. What's the future hold? What's going to happen? My wife and I, we were actually looking for the future when we were going to be retiring from pastor, not ministry. We were looking at homes down in Florida. We was thinking about buying a home and having it for the next few years and whatever, and moving down there when we're done pastoring. There was just a check in my spirit. I said, we were ready to pull the trigger, and I told Diane, I says, we need to wait. And it was during that time, I had not gone to the doctor yet. God put this check in my spirit. Then I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so everything in our life changed at that point in time. I mean, I was to the point where I told Diane, I said, I don't want to talk to anybody about Parkinson's. I don't want to hear anything about try this or try that or anything. And I had actually people get upset with me because I said, I don't want to hear it. Send it to Diane. She can read it or whatever, but I don't want to hear it. Because I was in shock at this point in time. I think for the first 6 months to a year, I was totally in shock about what was happening.
So people started offering up their ideas and suggestions and all these things. And you haven't even processed.
No, I haven't even processed. But all of a sudden, there's people would say, go get this done or go get this done. Get stem cell, do this, do that. I didn't want to hear it. It's not that I was in denial, but I was so shocked. And
right.
And then you hear all these horror stories that people say, well, this is going to do. And it was just a mad time at that point in time at first.
Man, I'll tell you, for those listening, I think we often, when we go through something, we try to figure out how to fix it ourselves. But you're hearing somebody thinking about, okay, what's my future going to look like? How am I going to deal with this? How's my life going to change? Is my job going to change? My ministry, something I've been doing for, at that time, say 36 years of his life in ministry. And then it's like, oh, this could all go away.
Absolutely. And I didn't know, because at that point in time, my voice had gotten very soft. That's part of the Parkinson's. Parkinson's is such a disease that your brain quits making dopamine. And next thing you know, all your muscles are becoming rigid. And that's what was going on with me. And once I got diagnosed, I thought, how many more years am I going to be able to pastor? Am I even going to be able to pastor anymore? And it was a terrifying time in your life. You're thinking, processing all this. A couple of days after I got diagnosed, what if I don't get healed? I believe in healing. I believe God does healing. God's used me to pray for people, and we've seen miracles, and we've seen people healed. The thing about it is, I'm praying for healing at that point in time. At the same time, I've been thinking, but what if I don't get healed? I was listening to a song, the song came on about that time, and I'd never heard it before, but that was a few years ago. But it was, I Will Trust in You, from Lauren Daigle. And it says, if you don't move the mountains I need you to move, I'm going to trust in you. If you don't open the waters that I need to walk through, I'm going to trust in you. The whole idea was, regardless of whether I got healed or not, I was going to trust God for everything. And I still, today, that's the way I feel. If God wants to heal me, I'm praying for healing. I'm believing for healing. But it's not going to change my faith in Him and trusting God.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that when you've been on this faith journey for so many years of your life. What was the temperature check on your faith? Were you questioning, or did you say, okay, God, I know you got a plan? What were your thoughts then?
Well, my first thoughts is it was fear. What's the future? I wasn't that spiritual giant at that point in time,
Right.
I went home and I was crying, telling my wife what had happened and the diagnosis. And I had all the raw emotions that everybody else has when you get something that can change your life.
Yeah. It's such a tough situation. So now you've got this diagnosis, you're wrestling with it. You're trying to figure out what your future is going to be. What did you do differently? Did anything change? Did your life take a turn in a different way, that you took up things or did things that you hadn't done before then?
Absolutely. One of the things is I began to look at every Sunday when we had service. I began to think, what if this is my last day to be able to preach? And it made me begin to say, I'm going to go to the pulpit as if this is my last time ever.
Oh my
goodness. Made me reevaluate that. And I started looking at things differently, I started trying to take care of myself a little bit better. I started working out because the thing about with Parkinson's, you got to keep moving. If you stop moving, then your muscles begin to really stiffen up. And so I started riding a bike. I started boxing on a heavy bag. I mean, doing everything and actually playing golf, walking, and doing that. And it just keeps you active, because the worst thing you can do with Parkinson's is just sit back and do nothing. And they say the best you can do is keep moving and keep going. And I had to make myself do that, because that wasn't a part of my life before.
So can you imagine, those of you listening, you approach that sermon as if it's your very last. That's incredible. You take stock of your life and you think to yourself, okay, I've got to be active. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take up boxing, get a spinner bike or walk more, etc. He gets what feels like a horrible sentence handed down with no rationale on why it's happening. But yet, after that happens, things start to change in your life and you start making steps, different steps.
Absolutely. Right after I got diagnosed, the neurologist I had in town, he said he'd call me in a couple of days. I didn't hear from him. All of a sudden, my daughter gets online, begins to look around. She calls me and says, "Dad, there's a neurologist. He's a research doctor, one of the best they say in the United States. He's at Tufts Medical in Boston." As I called his office, they took me in as a patient. The doctor has done phenomenal with me. I mean, honestly, if you didn't know I had Parkinson's, you wouldn't know at all. Prayer and medication has worked wonders in my life, because I'm able to walk without pain any longer. I'm not dragging my left leg. I'm not having tremors. My speech is back. God put everything in order, for me to get the right neurologist. Great medications. It's helped me. And I have a bunch of people in the body of Christ who are praying for me. That's been a win-win.
It is neat to see that. I mean, he's definitely had a lot of people praying for him. I was thinking about your situation, and I was wondering if you've thought about why you're going through this.
No. I'll be honest with you. I feel like we're in a fallen world. Our spirits have been redeemed, but these bodies are still dying.
Right.
And no matter, we are susceptible to sickness and disease just like anybody else. And for us to think that we are not, well, take a look around. How many good Christian people have died from different diseases and different things? Then you have the ones that say, hey, if you had faith enough, or if you had the idea of there's sin in your life, what I mean, for somebody to say that to somebody that's ill with some terminal illness, that is such a prideful statement to make. When you start judging somebody else and telling them you sin because or you're sick because you've done these things, or you're sick because you don't have enough faith. Where do they get the idea that they can make that type of statement?
Right. It is interesting that I've seen Christians say, if you just have enough faith, you're going to get healed, or maybe there's something in your life that you need to deal with, and that's why this came upon you, etc. In reality, we know that there's no way for another person to really even have a clue. When we go through storms like this, there are three reasons. One is we go through a storm because God's protecting us. There's something, I use the example of, I almost went to California inside this year, and it was all this craziness and storms going on in my life. But it was God saying, no, you are not going to California. You're staying here. And I wanted to stay here, but I also wanted a promotion. But when you ask for God's will, he intervenes. And he said, you're leaning in this direction, but that's not the direction I have for you. The second one I've heard is that God is growing us. There's some purpose, higher purpose that he has. So we go through this storm because he's going to use us in our lives to impact more people. And then the third type of storm that comes in our life is what we call the self-inflicted storm. Scott goes out and does exactly the opposite of what I'm supposed to do. And I bring a storm on in my life. The truth is that none of us know why the storm came about and what God's ultimate purpose is. Our goal is we got to walk through the storm and just keep moving. I don't know if you have any response to that. But.
Absolutely. What I see, Scott, is a lot of times storms hit us. We don't even know it's coming. It's like a rogue wave that just hits us all of a sudden. And that's kind of what it was with me with this Parkinson's. It was like, I was not expecting this. I'm thinking it's just a hurt arm. It's just an adjustment I needed in my back or something because my muscles were tightening up. And it just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it was like your whole life is rocked for a moment, but once it settles back down, you realize God's still God in the midst of the storm.
Yes. Yes.
And it reminds me a lot of times when the young man who they said who sinned, his father or him or whatever, and he says neither. He's this way that God can be glorified. I'm looking for God to be glorified in my life, regardless whether I'm healed or not.
Yeah, and for believers listening to this, what he just said is really interesting because I've actually been studying this. We often think that God does things for us, and he does as his primary goal. But God does everything for his glory. That's right. What he does. And his glory, it could be in that I'm going through something because I've got to impact someone else. I gotta be on a journey that he wants me on to impact somebody's life. But if you look at the scriptures, you get a chance, you could even Google, God does everything for his glory. Man. It's hard to get your head around that, but it's like all things are for his glory, to reflect his glory. And that's what we're to do.
One of the things that's happened with this whole thing, Scott, I've had people from all over the different places in the United States call me and ask me, they heard that I had Parkinson's or have Parkinson's. And I've been able to talk with people, tell them what I'm doing, what's happening in my life. And it's just been amazing how I've been able to use this. Not that I'm glorying in Parkinson's, but how God's used it to open doors for me to talk to other people about the same thing.
Oh, that's so cool. Remember, I opened with the quote that nearly everyone prays for healing. A lot of people think that atheists don't pray, agnostics don't pray. Nearly everyone, when they get a diagnosis like Gary, they pray. It's just a natural thing. I don't know if it's almost instinctual because, the Bible says that every man is without excuse. They know there's a God. And so deep down inside, they know there's a God and they need help. They're like, okay, I'm going to call for help because I need it. Right. But I was going to ask you, how do you approach healing like that? I think that's what a lot of people struggle is like, do I pray for it? If I pray for it, how did you pray for it? And how do you continue to pray for it? So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I continue to pray for it. I believe in healing. I'm trusting God. I'm believing God, he's going to heal me. And I'm not wavering in that. I still trust in that. And I've been believing in that. And I'm going to hang on to that God's a healer because he is. One of the names of God was Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah heals.
Yes.
And he is a healing God. And, whether he heals me here, and some people may say that this is cliche, but if he heals me here, if he doesn't, when I go home to be with him in heaven, I won't have Parkinson's. But he's using me now, even with this, and I'm still trusting him in faith to say, God, I want you to heal my body. Right. I don't want to have to take medication the rest of my life. But you know what? It's in his hands. It's not my hands.
Right.
Because some people say, well, you don't have faith. I do have faith. But what about the man that was put down through the roof by his friends? And Jesus looked at them and said, their faith has made you whole. It wasn't his faith. People praying for me is just as valuable as me praying for myself.
Yes. I love the story of Hezekiah. The Bible says he became seriously ill. Isaiah warned him to get his affairs in order because he was going to die. But what did Hezekiah do? He went up against the wall and started crying out to the Lord and telling him how obedient he's been to God's precepts, his laws, and how faithful. And I never caught this, but before the prophet left the house, God heard his cry and he turned around and extended his life by 15 years. God put that in there for a reason. When you think about, he gets a death sentence, he immediately gets up and does what, I don't know if all of you do, but I do. When I'm in a dark place, I cry out. Like I just do. It's kind of a natural thing now, but I kind of scream that stuff out. I'll go for walks and do that. But Hezekiah goes up against a wall, probably in shock like Garry was, and he starts crying out. And before the prophet leaves the house, he turns around and says, okay, we're going to extend your life. Oh, that's an amazing story. But
Well, I feel like God's given me more years. I mean, I feel really great now. I have good movement back, and I feel like I'm almost right back to 100%. And I'm looking to stay in ministry for another number of years. I mean,
Right.
I don't have a planned retirement. I believe God's going to extend the ministry, and we're seeing great things continue to happen. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what God's doing in my life. We could all get down because, I got Parkinson's, I can't do this or can't do. The one thing it has affected, though, is my golf game.
I know. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I mean, at one time I was a pretty good golfer, and now I'm struggling because balance issues. Because with Parkinson's, there becomes a balance issue. I mean, it's a work. Every day I have to take the regimen of medicine. I have to do certain things, because it's just part of it. Your life changes.
It's interesting because I was asking folks, and they're like, if he has Parkinson's, you'd never know it. His preaching's the best it's ever been. He keeps getting better, and his energy level and his vision for the ministry, and he's involved in all these things. Just saying that God, whatever's happened in your life with Parkinson's, it hasn't affected what God has called you to do. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's a little funny that your golf game is struggling a little bit.
We're working on that. But.
I know he's proud. You should see him. Like he switches out the clubs and tries different things. And I'm a horrible golfer, by the way. And this guy is the guy, I think the very first time I ever went golfing, he invited me to a charity golf event. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I had never gone golfing in my life. And I don't even know where I got the clubs. I had to think about that. But I go, and it was best ball. I only had 2 lucky shots out of 18 holes. I mean, it was miserable. I thought it was easy. It's miserable. He was giving me a little feedback, little tips here and there. And then he told me at the end, don't give up your day job.
Well, if you know anything about golf, I was down at one time to like a 6, fluctuating between a 6 and 10 handicap. Well, my handicap is a lot higher than that right now. It's climbing, and it's kind of frustrating, but that's part of it.
It must be to keep you humble, because I am humble every time I go golfing. I feel humble, but I'm thankful to get out there. We talked about Hezekiah. The other one that really interests me too is the woman with the issue of blood.
Yes.
She had tried everything, 12 years. I don't think any of us know what that's like, just to have that continuation, that problem continue. And she was saying, if I could just touch the garment. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's God, I just want to be with you. I want to touch you. And it takes us to some resolve to say, hey, I'm not giving up.
Right.
I'm going to do whatever I have to get into his presence, and, like I told you earlier, my preaching, I still look at it today. What if this is my last Sunday? What if this is my last message I'm going to be preaching to this congregation or to any congregation? Puts a whole different perspective on ministry and life in general. A lot of times we take our health for granted. Old age is not what it's cracked up to be.
Right.
But God is faithful. And that's where I still trust in him. Regardless if I get healed or not, I'm still going to trust him. And I think that's where we have to be. Don't be so quick to judge somebody else because they may have sickness in their life. Don't be quick to say, hey, what's the sin in your life? Why are you sick? You're sick because you got some sin in your life, or you're sick because you don't have enough faith. Don't do that to people. That is so wrong.
It's the opposite of what we're supposed to do, which is lift people up. You'll know a Christian by their love, those that lift other people up and encourage them and exhort them. One of the things I was going to share too is the power of positive thinking. There are scientific studies, by the way, that share if you have faith, if you stay positive, if you make a choice to be joyful, that your life is enriched. There's so many studies out there. And in fact, they are finding, the research is showing that people that pray, they see results. Mm-hmm. And many people think, and I think that I read that 2/3 of people believe in miracles. They believe that God is capable of doing miracles. They also believe in answered prayer. That's why so many people do it, by the way. If you want evidence, why do people pray everywhere if they weren't expecting God to do something? They're actually praying because they believe that God's going to do it. Well, the scientific community has started to research and test those theories in a variety of different ways. And the results are conclusive that prayer is powerful and it does work.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. Like, that's what the Lord wants us to be. And why I bring that up is because what he said is really important. He said the moment he found out, how many people do you know, and maybe you're struggling with this, and I'd love for you to speak on this, that they get the proverbial death sentence. And I have met so many people that the moment they learn that, it's like their life is completely different. Like, I'm not going to be around. I'm not going to be here to see my grandchildren. And I understand it because you're in shock and all that. So I'm not here putting anybody down for that. But what I'm sharing is that when you have that outlook like that sermon's I'm going to preach like this is my last sermon, which means what? I don't care what people think. I'm going to do what God's called me to do. This is what he wants me to do. People don't like it. That's too bad. Whereas maybe before, I wonder what people are going to think. Some of that stuff just falls off because You're like, I'm not even thinking about it anymore. But I don't know if you want to speak on that or not. But.
No, I mean, it does. It comes to the place where you just say, it's all about pleasing God. It's not about worrying about myself. It's about, if this is my last time, I want it to count.
Right.
And I want it to touch people's lives. I don't want to just go through the motions of it. I want it to be real. And that's what I try. That's what I try to do. I try to keep a good attitude about things because some people, like you say, they get the diagnosis next thing, they just give up. I'm not giving up.
Right.
I'm going to continue to fight the good fight. We're going to continue to plant more churches. We're going to continue to grow in the kingdom of God. And God has still more for us to do.
Yeah, it's so cool. If you're hearing this and maybe you don't even have a major ailment, but you feel like your life is just not where you want it to be and it's worthless and, hopeless. Let this message encourage you. It can be turned around. And God, I love that scripture. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice, I will open up and come into him. But it's like, all we have to do is open the door.
That's it.
Like he's like, think about that, everybody. He stands at our door and knocks. So just like that mindset, God, I want to please you. I want to be close to you. I know I've got this situation, but it didn't catch you by surprise, even though it caught Garry by surprise, threw him for a loop, but he gained his footing. He's like, okay, all right, then we got to move forward, right?
As a pastor, I continue to pray for people in the altars at times for healings and miracles. And you say, well, you're praying for them. Why aren't you healed? The idea is it doesn't matter. That's in God's hands. But I'm still going to believe God for healing for others and for myself. Like I said, fight the good fight. Don't give up. Keep your focus on Christ and glorifying him.
For those folks out there that have something that's been happening for years and they've kind of given up on that, they're just living life. Would you encourage them to pray for healing, or would you say?
I would say continue to pray for healing. I pray for people healing on their deathbeds. And as long as they have breath, I'm going to pray for miracles. I'm going to trust to God to heal them. But if God doesn't, we're going to celebrate them. They went home to be with the Lord.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And why do you think it's so important to keep praying, like praying or believing for the healing?
That's a good question. But I think, he tells us to pray without ceasing. We're told to continue. It's like the woman that wanted the bread, and she was knocking on her neighbor's door because she had a guest there, and she was just being persistent.
Right.
And was not willing to give up. And I think that's where our faith has to be. I'm going to keep knocking at the door until I believe God would heal me and make me whole.
Yeah, that it is. This whole faith thing to me is a journey of perseverance and pressing in and not giving up, because all of us know there are many times, and Pastor knows this, I ran the New York City Marathon, and I had practiced and practiced and practiced, over practiced really. And then when I got there, it was completely different. I had to be there, get up at 3:30 in the morning, 5:30 8:30, I caught a shuttle, and I didn't even kick off till 8, didn't even know what to eat. Whereas normally I'd wake up, I'd eat, I'd stretch, get prepared, and then I'd go run. I'd never thought about, Scott, you're going to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. You're not going to run until 8 or 8 till your heat is called. And 13 miles, I was dying. 16 miles, I thought I couldn't go on. I wanted to give up. And I'm not a person that really gives up anything. And our faith is a lot like that. Like we're going to be tested in a way that I'm not saying that God's trying to get us to give up, but it's to get us to break through these resistance barriers so that we know without a shadow of a doubt that when God says, I'm going to equip you to do something, we're going to do it. But it's going to be hard.
It's perseverance. It's just staying there and saying, God, I'm just believing you and trusting you to do this. And I can't do it myself. I need you. I need a healing touch, and just keep going back, keep knocking at the door.
How would you encourage other believers to stretch out their faith for others versus just thinking about healing for themselves?
I think that just being positive with that person, talking to them, giving them, our words should be edifying and building others up in their faith. And that's one of the things we need to do instead of judging somebody, trying to judge somebody, speak life into them, encourage them, tell them that you're praying for them. You're standing with them in their situation. That's the love of God. That's showing them kindness and mercy. And sometimes human beings are not like that. We want to make it about us instead of about Christ. And I think that's the major thing.
It's so interesting what you're sharing. It bears witness with me. I just thought about this, that we're most likely to connect with people when they're going through something. For example, when I heard that, my heart was crushed. My whole family was praying for you left and right. The point is, like, these situations actually cause us to be his hands extended.
Absolutely.
Because folks feel, when these things happen, you can feel alone. Then others are coming around you and saying, okay, I love you. I want to pray for you. I want to encourage you, etc.
And as a pastor, I've been in some different situations. And one of the ones that come back to mind, it was my first time this ever happened. I was called to the hospital by a family that was just starting to come to the church when I was pastoring in Florida. And their baby was dying, a newborn baby. And I went they called me. I went back into the trauma room where they had the baby. And the mom's sitting there, and doctors and nurses all around. There was no words you could say. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there as this mom's rocking her baby, and it passes away. And we just begin to cry. I didn't have words to say at that point in time. But you know what they said to me later on, says, it meant so much, brought so much comfort to us for you just being there. Sometimes just being there for people makes a difference.
And that's good word. My goodness. So what are the words that really resonated with you, that ministered to you or touched your heart?
I would think my wife, she was really an encouragement during that time. We got this. We'll get through this. And she was very concerned, and she's still concerned. At nights, there's things that happen in my sleep because of the medications at times. And she'll say, are you okay? Are you okay? To have her there and to just the encouragement that she's been in her words, it's been amazing.
I had a chance to go to lunch with them on Sunday. When you love someone as much as she loves you, you can tell she still wrestles with this whole thing. And it's almost like you see two things out of her. One is she trusts the Lord completely. And that's what she said. I just have to trust the Lord. She said, though, it doesn't take away all my questions.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think all of us have questions still. Why did I have Parkinson's? I don't know. But you know what? One day I'll know, but one day I won't have Parkinson's either.
That's right. That's right.
But it's amazing. She has been such a strong person in my life to stand on, and she's just been there with me and just been an encouragement. Because I was really, during that first year, like I said, I was in shock. And Diane was there just to encourage me. She's just God's gift to me.
And you preached during that whole year.
Yes.
You didn't stop anything.
I haven't stopped anything. I'm not going to stop.
No, but I mean, I didn't even reflect on that because, folks, by the way, it takes a while to get the medication worked out. So it's not as if you got diagnosed with Parkinson's and the next day you're on a regimen of medication and everything's back to normal. I think you just said it's taken a long time. And more recently, you feel like, okay, I'm pretty much back to the old Garry, but that's 4 years later. How did you deal with that first year? And you preached, you did the Bible studies, all the stuff that you normally do.
I'd have to say by the grace of God, honestly, because I had a lot of different things on my mind, but I had to continue to seek God, even getting into the Word and just saying, "Hey, I've got to get a word from God on I'm still pastoring, and I got work to do." That kept me going. I just didn't want to just sit back and say, I'm not going to do this anymore and feel sorry for myself. Because a lot of times you get diagnosed with something, you start feeling sorry for yourself. Why me? But there's more to do. And God just kept me going at that time. And, the regimen of medication, it took some time. Today, I'm on 5 different medications for the Parkinson's. My doctor's been really good with that and helping me with that. And that's the reason I feel like I'm where I'm at today, because but that first year it was, I look back and I said it before, I was in shock, but God helped me. His grace really helped me and encouraged me to move forward. And even that's when I first said, I want to approach this like this is my last Sunday. And that made such a big difference,
It's interesting. I didn't even think about this, but a lot of people do withdraw.
Absolutely.
And you see, I'm not here to say there's a formula, but you see somebody who said, okay, I got sucker punched or hit really hard. I'm going to stay with it. Yeah. I think we should all think about that.
I got diagnosed like on a Wednesday or Thursday. I was preaching Sunday. I still got ministry. I still got to be obedient to what God's called me to do.
And you waited a time before you got the diagnosis, but you waited a few weeks
before I mentioned it to the congregation. I've been pastoring the church here for 24 years. I look at the church as a family, and I want to let them know where I'm at. And I give updates every once in a while about what's going on. It's actually brought just a tightness as a family, because a lot of times pastors like to feel like nothing's ever bad happened to me. I'm spiritual. I'm such a giant that nobody doesn't touch me. But that's not being real. Your congregation feels so much closer to you when you're open and you're real about what's going on in life, and you struggle with real things like everybody else struggles with.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know this is going to bless a lot of people. And before I wrap up, is there anything else you would share with folks as they have loved ones going through something like this, or they are going through something like this? Anything you'd want to share that we didn't talk about? I
guess the only thing I would highlight is get good people around you that's going to speak into your life. Words of encouragement, words that's going to build you up, words that's going to build your faith. I guess be careful about who you let speak into your life. If somebody's trying to tell you what sins in your life, or why don't you have enough faith, push that stuff away and get people to speak life into you. It makes a difference.
So I want to close with a little story. I was telling Garry that I have an Indian friend that I work with, and she didn't grow up in the church, nor did she know anything about Jesus. And we were talking about healing. She knows the studies about the power of positive profession. And I said to her, I agree with what you're saying, that the Bible tells us to be affirming and to be encouraging and to be positive, right? Because that's what we should be. But I told her, I said, the difference is, imagine thinking positive thoughts for yourself versus putting those positive prayers to the King of Glory, to the God of heaven and earth, who can actually do something about our situation. And when I opened the podcast, I shared with you that everyone prays. Everyone prays. Everyone wants to believe that they're going to be healed. A good portion of people have seen people healed and they believe it, and that's why they keep doing it. That's what the research says. That's not my words. But I think, as you heard from Garry, it's not always easy to understand why we go through the things that we go through. Remember how I talked about the storm to protect us, the storm to grow us, or the storm to keep us or to help us get back on the right path. We don't know what storm, but God is saying to us, get up. And I think there's so many things we can learn from his story, which is I never thought about, but he kept on keeping on, not only mentally, but physically. He kept preaching. He kept doing those things. And he took all those concerns and those frustrations or emotions to the Lord. And he had what all of us have, which is fear to start out with, because you're thinking, what's going to happen? How's my life going to change as a result of this? 2, he had really positive people around him, people that loved him and cared for him, that lifted him up and didn't tear him down. And some of the best advice he could give is to help us think about how we respond to people who are going through these types of things. And 3rd, we learn there's no real formula for healing.
No.
There's not. Like God gives Hezekiah 15 years. The woman says, if I could just touch him, I could be healed, but I've tried everything else. You got the person that said they were born with a physical deformity and they get healed, and God said, well, it was for his glory. And then you've got Paul who says, I went to the Lord 3 times and asked him to heal, or I took my situation 3 times, this thorn in the flesh, and God said, my grace is sufficient for you. So we know there's no formula that says, okay, if you just do all these things the right way, you're going to be healed. It's like he said, we believe for healing now, but maybe I'm getting my healing when I get to heaven, right? That's what could happen. So wherever you find yourself, wherever you see your family members struggling, you have the power to pray, to believe, to encourage, to exhort, and to lift up the people around you, to lift up yourself before the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth, and ask him to look in on your situation. Gary, what you may not have thought about, has experienced healing. He's preaching. His sermons are powerful. He just told you he's virtually symptom-free. God used modern medicine and prayer to do that. God may choose to put his hand on you and just erase it. We don't know. But we just walk on. We keep doing his will and walk in faith and not by sight. Wherever you find yourself, be encouraged. And thank you again, Gary, for joining me.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. I hope you've enjoyed listening to today's podcast. Would you take a moment and provide a rating, subscribe, and consider sharing this message of encouragement with others? You can also visit us on scottnuckles.com to get more information. Until next time, blessings.